supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Dynamic Dog Owner. I hope you are well. Today we're going to talk about walks and walking your dog, because I think most people would agree that when you decide to get a dog, one of the main things you're looking forward to is lovely, long, relaxing walks and miles off lead in the countryside. And the reality of that often ends up being not quite what you had imagined, because walks can be probably one of the most stressful times you have with your dog for most people, because it's obviously where you encounter other people and other dogs. It's also where you obviously have to look hard at training a recall if you want to let them off lead. And you've got that double-edged sword of, if their recall's not great, then you really need their lead work to be good, because you don't want to be pulled around. But then lead work is really tough too. So they aren't necessarily what you had planned on. And I think we all feel it, because I think especially if your dog isn't perfect, you often feel judged on a walk. And it's really hard to kind of see a way out and see a vision of how your walks are ever going to improve when they're really, really quite tricky. And that's obviously where we come in, not just to help train your dog, but to almost give coaching advice about how we can sort of break the task down to be much easier. Now, obviously, you need to train a recall and you need to train your dog to walk nicely on the lead. So do look back at previous episodes, because we have got podcasts specifically about recall, lead work, tips to improve those, why sometimes it's not about lead work or recall, actually about your dog's emotions. But today we're going to look at more of how do you break this task down? And it's something I kind of live by and have adopted over time. And I find it just helps so much, because when we are obviously having not necessarily problems with our dog, but when the walks aren't as enjoyable as we would like them to be, it's really hard to see the wood for the trees. And so many people say to us, oh, that makes such sense, or oh, that's really good. It's common sense, really, that advice you've just given me. And of course it is. But when you're emotionally involved with working with your dog, it's really hard to step out and see things from an outside perspective. And that is where working with a dog trainer and a dog training coach can help, because we look at things from a sort of unemotional, detached point of view. We get very emotionally invested in our clients, but we're not living the situation day in, day out. And therefore we can look at it from a new perspective, which is often really important. And today I want to talk to you about how I break down my walks. So each walk for me has a purpose. So I always ask myself, what is the purpose of this walk? And therefore, what are the rules? What are the expectations? And what do I want from my dog? And I think personally, this just helps, because if you break it down, you take your dog for a walk, more often than not, you go for a walk with friends or you go for a walk with family. So you've got multiple people all trying to fight for your attention effectively. If your walks are anything like mine, if you go out as a family, which is often why, to be honest, I separate the task out, and I either take my kids out or I take my dogs out. I rarely take them all together, because my kids need a lot of my attention. My dogs need a lot of my attention. So it's easy just to split it out. But even if you're walking with a friend, you're having a conversation, your attention is not 100% on your dog. And naturally, you're not going to be rewarding all the things you want. But equally, your dog's attention is always changing, because the walk can involve so many different things and so many different aspects that we then kind of confuse them almost, because at one point we're asking for loose lead walking. Then at one point you're allowed to go and say hello to dogs. Then at one point you're not allowed to go and say hello to dogs. And then, do you know what? We're in a bit of a rush, so I'll let you pull. It gets really confusing for your dog. And also for you to go, what am I doing now? So that's personally where I split my walks out into categories. So the question is, what is the purpose of your walk? And my purposes are kind of split into five different sort of categories, so to speak. And we're just going to go through them today and sort of see how I categorize them out. And it may be something you go, that's quite good, and you adopt it yourself, but you absolutely don't have to by any means. So I don't think any one of these is more important than the other. That's a lie, maybe I do. We'll reflect on that. So they're not in any particular order, let's put it that way, and I'll decide which one my favourite is come the end. So the first one is what I call a training walk. Now, obviously, every moment you spend with your dog is training. So what is a particular training walk then? Because all the time, even if you don't realise it, you're teaching your dog stuff. So you are almost training your dog at all times. But I suppose our training walk just puts it into a specific context and almost like gets our head in the game. So a training walk for me is a short 5-10 minutes, maybe even 15. And that depends on your dog, their capabilities and what you're actually training. And a training walk is where I expect a high level of training. And that's why it's really short, because to keep, especially if your dog is struggling with something, to keep working at a really high consistent level, both for you and your dog for a long period of time, is really tough. So say, for example, you're working on lead work. You can't expect your dog not to pull and be perfect for an hour's walk. And you can't expect to have your head in the game and reward every single opportunity for an hour, because it's exhausting for both you and your dog. But breaking it down into 5 or 10 minutes, it's focused. So you've got 5 or 10 minutes that is 100% focused on your dog, and they can focus their attention for 5 or 10 minutes. And we can almost isolate out one particular thing we're working on. So in that 5-10 minutes, it's not about perfection, but it's about working to a high standard and expecting high standards from your dog and delivering a high standard of training to your dog. But also it means we can work on particular things at one particular time. So say lead work, let's use that as an example. This means for me, when I get a new dog, so normally it's a puppy, as soon as they start struggling with lead work, out come our lead work training walks. So I practice, I'm lucky to live in a close, I practice for 5 or 10 minutes in my close, back and forth, roundabout. I don't have a purpose, I don't have a goal, I don't have a destination. I just practice my lead walk in that space and whatever enters our space for 5-10 minutes. We don't have to worry about rushing home if we're late because we're right outside the front door. And it just means we work on one thing and one thing only and focus our attention. If you're working on recall, that could be that you go to a specific place, like, I don't know, a park, and you do nothing but practice your recall for 5 minutes and then go home. Because again, doing it over and over and over and over again for hours is really tough. If you're working on reactivity, it could be for 5 or 10 minutes, we go to a space where we know our dog can succeed. So a big open space, we know there's dogs around, but maybe they're on a lead or they're far enough away. And for 5-10 minutes, we just work on what do we do around other dogs, learn to ignore them, refocus on me, engage. And again, 5-10 minutes is achievable. It's a short period of time that your dog is going to succeed. Maybe I think that one's the most important. I don't know. To be honest, I think it's probably a combination of all. But I like a training walk because it's focused time and energy, and it's setting your dog up for success that then transfers into a general walk. The next one is a sniffy walk or a mooch, whatever you want to call it. An opportunity for your dog basically to just be a dog and sniff. Now, obviously, this is kind of ties in with some of the other ones. But for me, a sniffy walk is on a lead, and I purposefully go to somewhere that is really smelly. Which sounds really odd, but it could be that you go to a woodland. It could be that you go to a car park. I know it sounds a really silly thing to do, but if you think about Tesco's car park, the amount of people that walk through the car park, drop things, leave their smells, it's a fascinating place to be. When it's closed and when it's quiet, going there with your dog and just sniffing everything that's gone on in that space, or even in an industrial estate maybe, a church graveyard, it's quiet, there's not a lot going on, there's no other dogs, we haven't got to worry about stresses, but we just focus on sniffing. And it's almost, for me, the time where I'm at the end of the lead, so my dog can't go anywhere, get into any mischief, but I follow his nose. So wherever he chooses to go is where we go. One of my dogs finds this concept a little bit harder because he's like, Mama, you're not going to tell me where we're going? And he's very focused on me. The other two are like, yep, we're off. And I basically am at the end of the lead, managing lead and encouraging them, keeping an eye on what they're sniffing, showing interest in what they're sniffing, but letting them sniff whatever smell they've got for as long as they want, but also in any direction they choose for us, there's no rules really apart from follow your nose. The only loose rule we have is please don't pull me towards smells, But my job is to basically be one step ahead and be always following them so that they never have to pull, and they are completely free to sniff and mooch around. And that's why I'd say go to a really quiet space, because then you haven't got to worry about other people, triggers, etc. You can just let them sniff. This for me is a really important walk, because sniffing, as we know, is so important for our dogs. It's really, really valuable for their mindset, their well-being, them just enjoying sniffing, but also for gaining loads of information. And it's a nice outlet for them to be able to sniff. And when do we ever just let them sniff? Not enough. Because normally there's other things coming in. You've always got to go, oh, we can't go that way because there's traffic, or we've got to go this way because there's someone walking towards us. But just to fully let them lead the way with their nose is really, I think, empowering for them. And obviously, if your dog is a little bit on the stressful side and they need to calm down, or, they are reactive, for example, it's really nice de-stressing walk where they can just gain information. Often it helps build their confidence in new places as well. And I say going late at night or at quiet times, you're not likely to meet anyone. So it can be really stress-free. The third walk for me, I'd probably say this is one of the least important ones, in my opinion, for my dogs. It may not be for you. And it's a social walk. So a social walk is where my dogs purposely go and meet other dogs. Now, this doesn't mean they play and go to a dog park, but it means we have a structured social time. Now, I'm fortunate, my dogs live in a multi-dog household, so they have social interaction all the time, and that's maybe why I don't put a lot of value on this type of walk. We do it with one or two other dogs that we know. And more often than not, my dogs ignore them and they ignore them, which is perfect. This isn't an opportunity to just go to a place and let your dog run free and just be a social menace. It's about practicing social skills. So I think, it's a whole topic, but socializing with other dogs is important, but it's important if it's done in the right way. So simply letting it be a free-for-all and going to a park, letting your dog off lead and running around like a nut job with every dog it meets and you have no part in it is not what I mean. Because social skills are important, but it's also good for them to practice polite social skills. So polite social skills are often being with another dog and just choosing to spend time together, not bouncing, playing, jumping, wrestling and all that kind of stuff with loads of different dogs. It's about having quality interaction. See it as like going for a coffee with a friend. You don't necessarily hug and play together. You're not all over each other. You're just sitting, sharing space together, catching up. You might have periods of silence. You might sit and read a book together. You're enjoying each other's company, but not in an over-the-top way. Very, very different from going to a party where there's loads of different people and you don't really have any meaningful conversation. You just talk to lots of different people. Which one's more valuable? I personally would put more weight on the quality conversation. So spending a period of time with one or two familiar dogs for a period of time, in my opinion, is more beneficial than lots and lots of meetings and greetings with new dogs. So this is where I might meet up with a friend and go with one of their dogs, one or two of my dogs, and we share a walk together. The dogs get to practice being around other dogs, practicing polite manners. They get their social needs met. Because we have to remember, especially if you're living in a single dog household where you just have one dog, there's a fine balance between giving them the interaction with other dogs and their own species and creating a monster who wants to say hello to every dog they meet. And obviously we have to provide social interaction, but in a most constructive way possible. And for me, this is where social walks come in, especially if it's someone you know, because you don't have to be on the edge about offending people. If their dog's doing something you doesn't like, you say, oh, just call them away for a sec. You're not going to upset that person. You're not going to make any sort of awkward human situations. But they are valuable, I think, for many dogs, but not necessarily in the way you might think. Playing with other dogs is reserved in my house for your brothers, and that's it. That's the only people we really, really play with because they are busy mates. But if you've got a friend who your dog meets up with quite a lot and they play intensely, great. But we also want that time where they're just around other dogs in sharing their company and not sort of into each other the whole time and going a bit cray-cray. And again, everyone puts different value on these walks, but for me, social walks are where we teach good manners. What I often find is that when people have a really young puppy, they go out and meet as many dogs as possible and let their puppy interact and play with every single dog they meet, which is lovely for social skills, but it doesn't teach your dog a balance between learning how to ignore. And again, to me, you wouldn't run up to the street and say hello to every person you meet. You wouldn't hug them. You wouldn't say, hi, who are you? And find out everything about them. If you think about sort of your interactions, you would probably ignore most people that you see, politely say hello or good morning to one or two, and then stop and have a good conversation with people you actually know. Our dog's social life should probably be quite similar. You see dogs, you walk past them, you might have a quick sniff of a few that walk past you, and then you have the good, meaningful conversation with the ones you know or you are forming friendships with. And that way you work on a really good basis that most of the dogs you ignore, only a few you say hello to. And it will, more often than not always, but it will often help with preventing frustrated greeter and all of that kind of overexcitement around other dogs. So that's my social walk, and that is something I purposefully go and do for that reason. The reason for my walk is to socialise. The next walk, for me, is probably, again, one of the most important. It's a freedom walk. So what do I mean by a freedom walk? A freedom walk for me is where basically there are minimal rules and expectations. My dogs are just free to do what they want to do, how they want to do it, when they want to do it, which sounds very like giving them a lot of freedom. But that's why we do it in a controlled way, because obviously in real life, when you're out for a walk, you have to have an air or an element of safety, control, so as you're not annoying anybody else, dangers, stuff coming into your environment, etc. And that for me is where my freedom walks take place in a secure field. So a dog walking field that I hire. That way my dogs can have freedom, but they're having freedom in the safest way possible. So I know they're not going to be sort of a menace to society and causing danger, going too far away from me. I hire my favourite dog walking field that we go to. It's over an hour away, but we hire it maybe once a month. And we go for 2.5 hours. It's 25 acres. And from the moment I let the dogs in to the moment we come home, I don't really talk to them. Which I know probably sounds really like, why do you go for a walk and ignore your dogs? We share space together. So I don't recall them. I don't ask them to do much for me. Occasionally I might ask them to pose for a photo, but that's about it. But they are free in that time to do what they choose. It's completely up to them. They can go where they want. They can sniff where they want. They can go as far away from me as they want to, because there's a fence keeping them relatively close to me. I let them chase birds. I let them chase pigeons. I let them go off a little bit further with the smells. To be honest, they don't, because they want to hang out near me, which is lovely. But they are free. I'm not asking anything of them. And I think often a lot of people use dog walking fields for training opportunity, which is great, because obviously it is a lovely safe place to practice your recall. But I think they also need to be used for time where your dog can just be free without anyone nagging. Because if someone's nagging at you all the time, it must be really boring. Every time you're out in your natural environment, someone's asking you to do something. I don't think it's fair. So I think it's a nice opportunity to just let them be them for a bit. So that's my freedom walk. They can do within reason what they want. Obviously, standard rules apply. Don't jump up at me still, but that's already something one don't do. Don't be a menace. Don't wreck the joint, but be free to do any dog behaviours you need to do. And I'm not going to ask you and actively engage with you apart from if you ask for it. And I think personally for me, that's the most important. That is my dogs being a dog. And that's why I put a lot of emphasis on it, and I do it quite a lot. I would say my dogs have mini freedom walks every day. And then we have a big freedom walk once a month. Alongside all of the others. Now, the fifth and final walk is what I call an A to B walk, which is basically I need to get from A to B. I need to go somewhere. You've got to come with me. And this is where, if you think of all of our walks as being opportunities to So the freedom walk, the social walk, the sniffy walk are all opportunities to practice being a dog and just enjoy. Training walk is to focus on skill. For me, A to B walk is more of a test or a necessity. I have to walk you from, let's say, the house to the vets. I have to take you, or from on holiday, I have to take you from here to here. I have to walk you, or I have to take you for a wee. Those type of things. And they're the ones where we tend to test things a little bit more. We tend to have urgency. And for me, they're the ones I do the least. An A to B walk rarely happens. Because most of my walks are for my dogs or for training. And an A to B is when we test it and go, right, I need to do this with you. Let's hope all of our stuff comes together. It may be when you're on holiday, you need to, obviously dogs have to come with you more, don't they? So you have to, do stuff for a purpose. There's no time. I need to get back. We're doing this. We've got no time for mucking about and sniffing and training and all that kind of stuff. And they, for me, are the ones I do the least, because we are effectively wanting to pull all of our dogs' skills together and achieve a purpose. And when we do them too often, I think that's when they start to become a struggle. So that's why I put least emphasis on them, because I spend a lot of time doing the others. And then they tend to go better because we don't do them very often. Now, that's the only sort of 5 walks I categorise in. But then I think there's one other that for me is really important, and that is a walk without your dog. And I know it sounds really silly because you've got a dog because you want to take it out for a walk and enjoy time with it. But dog walking is not always enjoyable or stress-free. And sometimes leaving your dog at home and going for a walk without them is really, really, really valuable for you. And it's something I do it with my kids. If I'm taking my kids out somewhere, I say kids, they're teenagers now, but they need a little bit of more TLC than other teenagers may do. So if I'm taking my children out for a walk, more often than not, I'll leave the dogs at home, because it's easier to not have to deal with both. Or if, what it's like if you're training and your dog's pulling your arm out of the socket, I just want to go and walk here and enjoy it and not have to worry about them. It's okay to not take them and leave them at home. It's okay to go for a walk without them, because it's then time for you to enjoy your walk, relaxing time, because that's what we do it for, mental health or enjoying peace and quiet. It's okay to do that. And I think sometimes we think because we have a dog, every single walk we go on should be for them. Everything we do, they should come with us. And it's not always right for the dog, and it's not always right for you. So I think a little bit of emphasis does have to be put on that. If it's tough, go for a walk without them, because then you're getting what you need from it. A lot of people like to walk really, 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 really fast, and it's a exercise for people. My walks are not necessarily exercise, because we stop and sniff every 5 seconds. You just get a good pace on, then there's another sniff when we stop. So if you're looking to walk for your own well-being, to really march out and walk quick, leave your dog at home. Go for a sniffy, mooty walk with them, and then go for a power walk by yourself. Everybody's getting what they need. And it's not, again, that conflict of, I need to go walk really quickly for my exercise. You want to stop and sniff. And then that's where, again, we get conflict with our dog, which doesn't always go well. So which do I think is most important? And there's the big question. They all have their own purpose, obviously. They all have a really important purpose. And when they work together, that's when I think you get the all-round success. I would say, for me, the least important is definitely the social walk. And this is personal preference for me. Everybody is different. So what's least important for me might be most important for you. Social walk is least important for me. I would then say A to B. I don't do it very often. And then I would probably say sniffy walk is kind of like third important. Then I would say training walk is second important. And the freedom walk is most important. That's in my opinion. Because I think the purpose of our walk is for our dogs to have a lovely time. And dogs have the most enjoyable time if they are free to be a dog and do what dogs do. And that's where the freedom walk comes in. So for me, freedom walk satisfies my dog's needs to just be dogs. And if I satisfy that need, they're way happier. Training walk, obviously, because I need I need them, to walk nicely on the lead. I need them to recall. I need them to not be reactive. I don't need them to not do all those things, but it would be ideal if they were good in all those areas. And that's our focus training time. So I think that's important. And then for me, the sniffy walks are really fun because we just get to go out and sniff together. And say A to B, we just don't really do it very often. And I do it when they're ready. And then a social walk, for me, again, my dogs have got dogs at home. They're all happy. They don't need other friends. They've already got some. And it's not about dogs having a million friends. It's about people. 1 or 2 quality friends and quality interactions is way better than 20 crap interactions. So that's my kind of thoughts on walks and how we can separate them down to make sure that we're having success, because success is the most important thing. It's isolating out each thing. So each walk has a purpose. Humans know what's the goal. What am I working on today? Dogs know, or not necessarily know, but they can start to see the context of the different walks and what's expected of them in what time. But they're also getting their needs met, which is really, really important. They're getting to be dogs. And I think when you get in your own mind, what am I going out for a walk for? And focus your energy on one thing, it helps you to isolate out and work on that one thing, which in turn helps everywhere else. So challenge for you is to think about your walks. What is the purpose of each walk you go on? Do they fall into these categories? Are there other categories that you think we could add in? And is there a healthy balance between them? Sometimes it's nice just to reflect and ask yourself, are they getting a good combination of all these different types of walks? And yeah, it's about analysing what you do and then seeing if there's any tweaks you think you can make. Because sometimes it's not until we stop and look at it and go, yeah, you're right. I don't do any social walks, for example, or I don't do any training walks. I just walk, which isn't a bad thing. If walks aren't an issue for you, then crack on doing what you're doing. But sometimes it's just really nice to stop and reflect. So next time you're out and about, just think, what type of walk is this? What purpose is it? And, do I need to balance the scales almost and make sure that another one gets a little bit more of a look in? Have a nice week. Have fun analysing your walks. And I will catch up with you all next week. Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.